Ready, George? Here we go. Okay, George, I'm gonna quiet it down. That's my old DJ. That's my DJ trick. Did you know I was a DJ? I was in college. Yes, I was. Wasn't a long-lived career. Oh, wait. We're on video. Hey there, Storytimers. Just me and George hanging out. What, George? I will. Relax. George says there's a story that I'm going to read today about him. And George, you see his name is Curious George. He gets in some trouble at the jobs that he goes to because he gets too curious. Do you ever get too curious and get in trouble? Happens. George doesn't try to get in trouble. Okay, all right. So George, do you mind sitting over on the side here with your friend, the whatever he is? Some little animal, I don't know. But sit over there with him and then we'll get back to you. Okay, so friends, here we go. This is Curious George Takes a Job. Now, George is a very smart monkey, but he just gets ahead of himself in terms of his curiosity. So let's find out what happens to him, eh? And then we have a Curious George craft to do. This is George. He lives in the zoo. He was a good little monkey, but he was very curious. He wanted to find out what was going on outside the zoo. A little bit of a jailbreak, if you will. So see what he does? He's pulling the keys out of the zookeeper's pocket. One day, when the keeper was not paying attention, George got a hold of the key for the cage, and when the keeper discovered what had happened, it was too late. Oh, George was gone. In fact, he's on the run right there. Where will he go? And that is the question. Where is George? So we look all around, see they're looking under and over and through and around. Everyone looked for him everywhere, but they could not find him. I know where he is, because I read the book. George was hiding in the hay of his friend the elephant, and finally the keepers gave up looking for him. George found a nice, cozy spot to sleep under the elephant's right ear. See him right there? He's a little hard to see, but he's right there. And the next morning, before the zoo opened, he got away safely. The elephant didn't seem to mind at all. Once in the street, George felt a little scared. What should he do in the big city? Maybe he could find his friend, the man with a yellow hat, who had brought him over from Africa a long time ago. Only George did not know where he lived. There was a bus stopping at the corner. George had never ridden on one. And quickly he jumped a lamppost, jumped on top of the bus, and off they went. You see, when you're a monkey, you monkey around, just like the song said, we're monkeying around. And he is not going in the bus, he's going on the bus. And there he goes, see? Whoosh, right on top. So he's getting a free ride. Free ride and stolen keys. Now, they were right in the center of town. There was so much to see that George did not know where to look first, because if I can open it without hurting the book, look at all the action. This is a city for sure. You got lots of stores, lots of people, lots of traffic. If only he could go on riding like this forever. See right here? He's got a bird's eye view of everything going on. But after a while, George got tired and a little dizzy, and when the bus slowed down to turn on a side street, George jumped off. There was a restaurant right in front of him. Something smelled good. Suddenly, George felt very hungry. The kitchen door stood open and George walked in. On the table was a big pot. Of course, George was curious. He had to find out what was in it. Now we have a little peek right here. If you get the book, you'll see what's inside. I'm not going to tell you. And then right here you have a can of tomato sauce. That might be a clue. Oi, 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 wait till you see him. When the cook came back, he had a big surprise. Spaghetti was all over the place, and in the middle of it was a little monkey. Oh, curious George. George had been eating yards and yards and had wound himself all up in it. The cook was a kind man and did not scold much. But George had to clean up the kitchen and then do all the dishes. My, what a lot of them there were. The cook was watching George. You're lucky to have 4 hands, he said. You can do things twice as quickly. 'Cause look, he's using his feet and his hands to wash and dry the dishes. Well, that would be handy. I think I'd break the dishes, just to say. I have a friend who could use a handy little fellow like you to wash windows. If you would like to, I will take you over to him. So they went down in the subway and took the uptown train to the cook's house, who was an elevator man in a skyscraper. So see, he's right there. Sure, I can use you, George, the elevator man said. I'll give you what you need for the job. You can start right away, but remember you're here for washing windows. Never mind what people inside the house are doing. Don't be curious or you'll get into trouble. Well, his name is Curious George. I mean, he can't help it. George promised to be good, but the little monkey sometimes forgets. George was ready to start. Like, see how very tall this city building is? These are all different apartments, and there he is way up top. My, how many windows there were, but George got ahead quickly since he worked with all 4 hands. Well, are they all hands or feet or whatever? He jumped from window to window just as he had once jumped from the tree to tree in the African jungle. For a while, George stuck to his work and did not pay any attention to the people inside. Of course, he was curious, but he remembered his promise. Now he's going to show you. He gets to see inside people's houses. I think I'd be curious too. In one room, a little boy was crying because he didn't want to eat his spinach. George didn't even look. He went on right away with his work. In another room, a man was taking a nap and snoring. George was sorry it was not his friend, the man in the yellow hat. He was listening to the funny noise for a while, and then he went on working. But what was going on here? George stopped working and pressed his nose against the window. 2 painters were working inside. George was fascinated. Painting looked like a lot more fun than washing windows. Uh-oh. A monkey with a can of paint might not be a good scene. The painters were getting ready to go for lunch. The minute they left, George climbed inside. Oh, what wonderful paints and brushes they had. George could not resist. Now, notice, all clean paint. It says wet paint. They're taking a break to go have a drying session and lunch. But George decides. An hour later, the painters came back, and they opened the door and stood there with their mouths wide open. The whole room had changed into a jungle, with palm trees all over the walls, and a giraffe, and 2 leopards, and a zebra, and a little monkey was busy painting himself on one of the trees. He's doing a little self-portrait. Then the painters knew what had happened. Now, I personally think it looks pretty good. If you're interested in jungle decor. Luckily, George was close to a door. He ran out as fast as he could. After him ran the 2 painters, and then the elevator man, and then the woman who lived in the place. Oh, my lovely room! Oh, my lovely room! Cried the woman. Don't let him get away! George headed for the fire escape. Poor George. Look at the big parade of people trying to get George. George reached the end of the fire escape. The others had not caught up with him yet. Here was his chance. They could not jump, but George could easily jump down and escape. In a moment, he would be safe. Poor little George. He had forgotten that the pavement was hard as stone, not like the soft grass of the jungle. He's hurt his foot. Too bad. The fall broke his leg. And an ambulance got stuck, and an ambulance came to take George to the hospital. He got what he deserved, said the woman. Making my apartment into a jungle indeed. I told him he'd get into trouble, the elevator man added. He was too curious. George had to lie in bed with his leg high up in a plaster cast. He was very unhappy. And it all started out so nicely. If only he had not been so curious. He could have had a lot of fun. But now it was too late. What does a monkey have for health insurance? I don't know. I got curious wondering about it. But next morning, George's friend, the man with the big yellow hat, was buying his newspaper, and suddenly he got very excited. This is George! He shouted when he saw the picture on the front page. Quickly he read the whole story and then ran into a telephone booth. Now, I don't even know if we have telephone booths anymore, but back in the day, that's how people called instead of using their own phones. You'd run into a booth, a little small booth. I am George's friend, he said to the nurse who answered the telephone. Please take good care of him so that he will get better quickly. I want to take him to a movie studio and make a picture about his life in the jungle. Don't let him get into any more mischief until I can take him away. Well, that is easier said than done, my friend. Finally, the day came when George could walk again. Your friend is going to take you away this morning, said the nurse. Just wait right here for him and don't touch anything. As soon as George was alone, he looked around at all the strange hospital things. I wonder what this is in the big bottle, he thought. So here's the big bottle, and on the side it says ether. This is like something you don't want to play with. George was very curious. It smelled funny. Suddenly his head began to turn, and then he felt as if he was flying. See, here he is with little wings. He's thinking he's flying. Then rings and stars danced before his eyes, and then everything went dark. Because they use this in the hospital to make people sleep when they need to have a procedure done. Ether. And this is how the man with the yellow hat found George when he came to call for him. They picked him up and shook him, but they could not wake him up. He was so fast asleep that finally they had to put him under the shower. How surprised he was when he woke up. There's the man with the yellow hat, and the nurse, and the doctor's got a spoon of medicine in his hand, and George is like, I'm in the shower, what's going on? George said goodbye to the nurse and the kind doctor, and then he and the man with the yellow hat got into the car to drive to the movie studio. In the president's office, George had to sign a contract. Now, he was a movie star. George, you're famous. In the studio, George was kept so busy all the time, he forgot to be curious. He liked the jungle they made for him and played happily there. So see, it's a movie set. They've got the cameraman, the light guy, the director. And when the picture was finally finished, George invited all his friends to see it. The doctor and the nurse and the ambulance driver and the man from the newsstand and the woman and the elevator man and the two painters and the cook and the reporter and the keepers at the zoo. Now showing Curious George. lights went out and the picture started. "This is George," the voice began. "He lived in the jungle. He was a good little monkey. He only had one fault. He was too curious." The end. And here's George painting his own ending. And so, the upshot to this story was that George got a job. He actually got a number of jobs, right? So he was washing dishes, and then he was washing windows, and then he just got too curious and got in trouble. Oh, and then he got a job as a movie star. Okay. Well, for our craft today, when you are famous and a movie star, you have to be on time. So that's what we're going to make. A George clock. See you in a minute over at the sound stage, the blue table. Here we are, crafting we will go. Oops, I was turning the clock a little upside-y sideways. So here you have Curious George in the middle, and his arms are the hour hand and the minute hand. So so if I say it's 2 o'clock, right, I have to take the hour hand, move the minute hand. Come on, George. There you go. And dun da da da, 2 o'clock. See that? Just like that. And you can practice learning how to tell time. So let me show you how to do your craft. George had to know how to do time to be famous. So your first job is to color this pre-done sheet on George being a clock. So you color it any darn way you want. And then there are his arms. The shorter arm is the hour arm, and the longer arm is the minute arm. So you color those, and then if you're not old enough to do scissors yet, then you ask for some help. Once you have this cut out, you put your colored paper on a paper plate, and then this is kind of the only tricky thing. Once this section is glued down, right, you're going to glue this section down, you're going to take one of these colorful doodads. I don't know what they're called, some kind of fastener. I'm going to call it a doodad. I'm going to pick yellow like the man's hat, his friend's hat. So here's yellow one. Mine was really a long one. These are nice and short. But you're going to get some help because these are sharper, not like sharp, but sharper at the end. And get somebody big to help you. And there's a little section on the color paper where it shows you. You put right there, see, just like that. It's almost like his little belly button. And there you go. And you put this little fastener through that section on your colored paper and put that through the paper plate, and then in the back, Mom and Dad will know what to do. You open up, I can't do it because it's fighting me, but it's really not hard. You open up, there we go. See, now it's not fighting me. You open up the fastener like this, and it lets George's arms, which you've already colored and somebody's helped you cut out, move. Okay, we are now to the super fun part. You get to decorate. So in your craft kit, you will have a strip of different stickers. Well, that one doesn't want to come, so I won't use that one. So this one has soccer balls and baseballs and all kinds of, tennis rackets, sports stuff. So what I did with my stickers, I put them on every hour that the clock would have as a decoration out on the side. I'll throw in a couple hearts. That's kind of fun. I think, oh no, I was going to put a heart on George, but I didn't. And voila, voila, they say in the movie business, George the movie star, and you have yourself a clock to practice telling time. That's it. Until next time, my friends, we'll see ya. And happy March, by the way. Bye-bye.